Hi everyone and welcome back to the Colour Cave where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem and this was supposed to be a bonus video. I've got quite a few things going on at home personally just now and I wanted to back up a few videos in advance just in case I have to disappear, which I will have to at some point. So apologies to those of you who the colouring videos really aren't your thing. I'm sorry if you feel as if you're missing out, but this is just what I have to do today. We're going back into The Beauty of Horror by Alan Roberts and we're going to get this page finished off, which was our little French boat and our tentacly thing. So we're nearly there. Please ignore this reflection as well. This is the sunshine coming through the blinds. Once I zoom in, you'll not be able to see it. So to finish off these bubbles around the outside, which is what we're going to do today, and just add a few finishing touches, I'm sticking with my Prismacolor pencils for now. And what I've done is I've picked out a gradient of purples, which incorporates some of these ones down here. And we're going to have dark bubbles down the bottom, and gradually we're going to work up and they're going to go to like a lavender colour at the top. I will put the pencils I'm using up on the screen for you. But as I always do, I'll read them out just now for you too. So starting off then, we have got lavender, which is PC934, lilac, PC956, a rather short Parma violet, which is PC1008, violet, PC932. Then we're going into more bluey purples, so we've got violet blue, which is PC933, Indian Throne Blue, PC208, and then heading into what I call our proper blues, we have Copenhagen Blue, which is PC906. I know you can't read that there, it's kind of rubbed off now. 906. And finally our darkest blue, which is Indigo Blue, which is PC901. So we're not going to get hung up on too many details because some of these bubbles are absolutely tiny. They're so small. But what we are going to do is we're going to try and give them like a spherical look and we'll graduate these colours up. So obviously the first few bubbles I'll explain what I'm doing and after that we'll just have a wee bit of a chat because obviously it's quite repetitive. So I'm going to start with this indigo blue here. And I'm really in my head, I'm trying to sort of split this up into a couple of sections, you know, as we go up like this. A bit like I did with the notebook when I was doing the background, so that same sort of process is in my head. If you haven't seen that video, I will link it down in the description and at the end card. You can go and check that out later if you want to see a bit more on gradients. So the best thing to do when you're going to do something like this is first of all take a scrap of paper and swatch out your pencils and just make sure that you're happy with the order of the colours. So I've just got them in the order that I read them out there. Now see, I think I might want to swap these two round. The indigo is actually quite dark. I just didn't press hard enough there, goodness me. Here we go. So as I've got these pencils beside me, I'm going to keep them in this order. So that just gives you a sort of a visual idea of what it's going to look like when you put it on your actual colouring book. And I'm quite happy that that's following a sensible pattern. So in this bottom section here, what I want to be doing is kind of alternating between the bottom three colours. When I say the bottom three, I mean the darkest three. So that's going to be the indigo, the Indian Throne and the Copenhagen. And I'll just start a little section at a time. So here's as good a place as any. And I'll show you in this big bubble first. So we want to leave a highlight and I want the highlight to be on this left hand side because what I'm going to do with the highlight is I'm going to tie it in with our lightning bolt. Again, that's just a very subtle detail that you probably wouldn't notice unless someone pointed it out to you, but it's something that can just add a little bit of interest to your picture. So I'm going to try and use like a backwards C shape here and just very lightly start to get the shape of the actual bubble. So very subtle to begin with. And I would say I want the highlight to be somewhere around here, so it's probably going to be a lot darker down here. So I'll just build that up ever so slightly. Obviously with the smaller ones I'm not going to be this meticulous, but I will still try and create the same idea, just not as detailed. Now this is quite a common exercise when practicing shading in drawing, so you know this is something that's actually, it's quite universal. So there we are, give that a bit of colour there. And then it's just a case of building up your layers so that you've got the depth that you desire. And then we want to work around that highlight area there. So something like that. So you want your highlight to be, I'll show you on here. You want your highlight to be that sort of shape because again that helps to denote the curvature. So keep this section light. But you can see there I've just cut out a sort of little shape. Now your other option is to just colour the whole thing, and then you can go back over your larger bubbles with like a white Posca pen or something like that, and actually physically add the highlight in. I may do that on a few of the smaller bubbles, but for the larger ones it's just as easy to do it in with your, to do it in with your actual pencil work. So say with the smaller ones, not going to take as much time over them. And just make sure that I'm leaving some sort of highlight. So I'll just pick and choose at random here a few bubbles to do in one pencil, because it's quicker to do it that way than to switch pencil every time you want to do one. And with the really teeny tiny ones, you can just leave like the top part of it white. So I'll take my indenthrine now. This is one of these details where you can spend as much or as little time as you want on it. It's entirely up to yourself. So I think we'll have one of these larger bubbles in the indenthrine as well. Why not? And again, just get the shape of that highlight in there. And then I'll switch back to my indigo. Now, people will have different ways of doing this. They'll have like sort of different methods and how they work their way around. I tend to find working a little section at a time with one coloured pencil and then skipping to another coloured pencil. That seems to work for me. It's not going to be the same for everyone. And I do find that people have different tolerances for stuff like that. I find things like this quite repetitive. It's one of the reasons I don't like colouring patterns. But for the sake of this border, if I break it down into little chunks like this, I find it fairly manageable, and I don't get bored doing it, because obviously I don't want to be bored colouring. That kind of defeats the purpose of the reason that I colour. So we can make the highlight quite prominent on this one. And I'm just keeping my pressure very light here. And just going back over and back over. Let's make that stand out a little bit more. There we go. So you get the idea. Fairly straightforward. As we start to come up the side, we want to start introducing another colour and then dropping off the darkest colour. So to give you an idea, what we would do is we would stop using the indigo and we would bring in the violet blue at the top end of the colour, so that would be like our next lightest shade. So now we'd be working with Copenhagen blue, indenthrone blue and violet blue. So the likes of here, I would use a little bit of the indenthrone and start to spread these out a little bit. And then I can take my violet and start incorporating that in at various points. And then I can fill in all the spaces here, or up to this point. A lot of this is just really going by eye and deciding what you think looks right. Again, it's one of those things, I've talked about this before, when you're talking about minor details in your colouring pages or even in your own artwork as well. Don't try not to get hung up on like too many intricacies of the parts of the picture that aren't the focal point. This is simply a border, that's all it is, and we need to remember that. So, it's very nice sitting and doing all the detail, and I've said this before as well, it's something that I really, really enjoy, but what I have to remember is that this is a tiny part of the picture and it's not the first thing that people are going to look at. So don't agonise over getting things absolutely perfect, because there's no need, there's absolutely no need. We're trying to remain relaxed and enjoy what we're doing. And agonising over tiny little details is definitely not going to be beneficial in that sense. So especially for me as well, quite often I like to colour to take a break from maybe, something that's a bit more labour intensive. If I'm working on like a graphite drawing, especially the dog portrait commissions that I do, they're very, very hard going. And you're concentrating and you're putting in a lot of detail. So for me, colouring is a way to still be able to do some art and create something pretty, but without the same sort of strain and pressures on myself of getting things absolutely perfect. Just jumping back to my indigo here. So one of the things that have made filming quite awkward, and also part of the reason, not all of the reason, that I'm having to do this as one of our main scheduled videos, is we have had our painters and decorators here, and they are painting the outside of our house, which has, it's just not been going very well at all. It really, really hasn't. The weather has been horrendous to start off with, which is not ideal. That's not really what we want at all. And they've literally been trying to come in between showers. and hoping that the masonry paint won't wash off the walls. They also couldn't get hold of the paint for the accent colour for around our windows, and because obviously it's a traditional farm building, so there's like sort of intricate stonework around all the window frames. They've had to wait. There's a backlog for that, so they've not been able to do that either. And when they have been going, I basically can't film anything because they're banging ladders up against the walls and they've been pressure washing things and one thing and another. And unfortunately for us, the microphone that I have is very, very sensitive and it picks up absolutely every little noise. So yeah, it's been a bit of a struggle. The house is looking better already though. We've painted the outside of it white again. I think many years ago at one point it might actually have been white, but it hasn't looked white for a long time. It's really nice and that's made a huge difference. But they're not finished, and so we're going to have more disruption. Apart from the fact as well that you don't have any privacy because there's 3 of them and they're all working in separate parts of the building. I haven't been getting dressed in my bedroom this last week. I've been shutting the bathroom blind and getting dressed in the bathroom. It's been interesting. That's kind of hampered things a little bit. So I'm just kind of like trying to cram in as many videos as I can in the quieter days. So I'm filming this on the weekend and thankfully the painters and decorators don't work the weekend. I've only got Mr. Jem to contend with who's banging about outside. But that's easy. I'm just going to come back down to this bubble here. Oh, bless you, little Jack Russell's a wee sneeze. I just feel as if this needs more. Just with it being a bigger bubble. Here's Pip coming as well. Hi, Pip. Okay, so now we're starting to work up the way and we're coming to sort of the halfway point between the top and the bottom of the image. So again, I'm going to switch out my bottom colour, which was the Copenhagen blue, and I'm adding in the violet this time. So I'm just going to start popping that in now. The other thing as well, again, when you're working in spaces this size, it's good to keep your pencils quite sharp. Just helps with a bit of accuracy, you know. If we were feeling really fancy, we could add in a yellow reflection on some of these from the lightning bolt, but I think that's just, that's maybe taking it a bit too far. All the bubbles. Some of them are really, really weeny, so I'm not deliberating over them too much. So now that my neck and shoulder are a bit better, Mr. Jem and I tackled the interesting and mammoth task of bathing our dogs. It's a bit of a military operation, especially with Jock, because things like getting wet or being put in the bath are very stressful for him, so that's things that irritate his skin. So we've got special shampoo for him and that's meant to help soothe his skin, but obviously it's kind of counterproductive because by going through the process of putting him in the bath, you're stressing him out, which makes him itchy. So a bit of a double-edged sword, really. Pip absolutely loves going in the shower, and it's because I have taken her in with me since she was a tiny wee puppy. Obviously, I was very careful with her, made sure the water was a nice temperature, and also made sure I didn't get any product on her, like soap or shampoo. But she regularly used to come in the shower with me, especially at the old cave, because our bathroom was downstairs. So she just walked straight in the bathroom. So she loves like splattering about in the water. We call it skiddling. If you skiddle, you paddle about in the water and flick it about, and like babies would do. So she's no problem. So the best option we've found is to actually take the dogs upstairs into our ensuite. Now the dogs are not allowed upstairs, so when they go upstairs it's exciting for them. And actually do them in the shower rather than in the bath. So Mr. Jem and I locked ourselves in the bathroom with Pip and Jock, and one of us went into the shower, which was me, and the other, Mr. Jem, sat outside the shower. And we put Jock in first so that he wasn't having to build up any anticipation, and gave him a good scrub. And he goes as far away from the shower jet as possible. He's trying to get as far away from it as he possibly can. It's such a shame for him, but he was so dirty. Like the colour of the water that was coming out of his coat was insane. And we try not to bathe Jock too often because, again, it can have a detrimental effect if you do it too often. But he was filthy, and that obviously was not going to be helping his itchy situation either. So we did our best, and I'm like trying to cuddle him and and wash him at the same time. But because he's cast in his coat as well, the amount of fur that came out of him. And meantime, all this time he's still trying to get away from me, like desperate to get away from me. So we got there in the end, but then once you're finished shampooing them, you turn the shower off and the other person hands you a towel in and you dry them off inside the shower cubicle as much as you can. Now again, Jock was trying to get away from me the whole time, and by this point he's starting to get quite antsy and quite agitated. So I did the best with him and then opened opened the shower door, and it's up to Mr. Jem to grab him and catch him, you know, before he started to shake and splatter the entire bathroom with his wet doggy coat. So Mr. Jem failed miserably. So my bathroom was resprayed with doggy water and hair. And then he just sat looking quite pathetic until we're finished with Pip. Okay, so now I'm into the violet, the Parma violet and the lilac. So we're getting really light now. Again, if I just take a wee zoom out here and show you as I've been chatting away. If I show you from the bottom, it's very, very subtle, but it's actually quite a nice effect, and it'll be even nicer once we've got the really pale colours up in the top here as well. So yes, definitely an experience, and something I can't do, well, sorry, not that I can't do, something that I couldn't do when my shoulder and my neck were really sore, because you're forever trying to like manoeuvre the dog round in the shower, and that would have done nothing for me. I wasn't fit to do it anyway, I just wasn't fit for it. So anyway, that was our escapades. I say Pip's an absolute dream. She thinks it's a game. She loves it. She still doesn't like you pointing the shower head at her, which you can understand. You know, she's not going to be all that keen on that. But the soaping up bit she loves because she's getting a rub. And then you see you skiddle about in the water with her, and she absolutely loves that. That's her favourite thing to do. So all in all, from start to finish, I think the entire process took us something like an hour and a half. Oh dear. And then after that, thankfully it was a nice day when we did it, so we just went out into the garden. You know, once we'd towel dried the dogs off as much as we could, we let them run about in the garden to air dry, so that was fine. But I'm really glad I don't have to do that any more frequently than I do, because it's such a hassle. It really, really is. So that's Jock for another wee while anyway. It's really nice though. Pip smells lovely. The shampoo that we've got for Jock doesn't have any scent to it for obvious reasons, but the one we use for Pip smells of oranges, so she smells absolutely lovely. It was actually quite strange though, because we were talking about doing it and we'd taken all three of the dogs out for a WALK, and we were talking about it while we were out. And I said to Mr. Jem, I says, well, we might as well just do the three of them, meaning Woo, the Jack Russell as well. But she's great because you just plonk her in the sink. She fits in the sink. When we were out, she, like, bearing in mind she's an elderly dog now, but she still likes to run and chase the tennis ball a little bit. You know, we take them out into one of the fields and give them a really good rumble round. And every now and then, being a Jack Russell, she likes to roll in things, and it's usually like a deer poop or something equally as tasty. And she hasn't really been doing it much, and when she does do it now, it's usually only one shoulder, and it's the shoulder that she goes down on to start rolling. And you can usually just give her like a quick wipe down. And I think it's just too much hassle for her to actually roll about in it properly, which is obviously good for us. So when we're out in the field, we're talking about this, and I turned round and we was on her back, like wiggling herself from side to side and like really rubbing herself into whatever it was. And she got up, and without a word of a lie, she was brown from top to bottom. She has a white dog, and she was brown from top to bottom. And I could smell her before she was even like within 10 paces of us. And I was like, oh my word, what have you rolled in? And I said to Mr. Jem, I said, isn't that funny? The one day that we said we're going to put her in the bath, I think she understands, and thought, well, I might as well make the most of this if I'm going for a bath anyway. But she hasn't done that for months and months and months. So that was equal parts entertainment and disgust at the same time. But I say she's really, really easy to bathe because she's perfect to fit in the sink. Right, okay, so that's me. I'm on my three lightest colours now, so that you can see up the top here. So we're now on to lilac. Well, it's Parma violet, lilac and lavender. So I'm actually going to start and work my way back down to where I was. So there's the middle there. I'll just, again, this is just for sectioning off, not placement of colour. And I'll start with my palest colour here, which is, it's actually almost like a pinky colour. Mr. Jem's got the strimmer out. You'll probably be able to hear that. I can't stop him though. This is one of his very rare days off, so we want him to strim things. We do have a gardener that comes, but Mr. Jem's very protective of his lawns, his grass. He doesn't like anybody else cutting his grass, and that includes trimming the edges with the strimmer. He's so funny. Our gardener did offer, he said to me, he says, would you like me to cut the grass? Because it's a ride-on lawnmower that we've got as well. We've got a lot of grass to cut. So we've got just a little cheap ride-on lawnmower, and Mr. Jem's like, nobody's cutting the grass, I'll do it. I was like, okay. But I think it's like a meditative thing for him, because he always seems quite happy when he's chugging along on his little ride-on mower with his cup of coffee. So I'm not going to argue with him, and he won't let me cut the grass either, even though I'm perfectly capable of doing it. He won't let me do it either. So I told the gardener, I was like, nope, just leave it. And he's like, do you want me to strim? I was like, nope, just leave that too. And he was like, well, no, okay. It's like, there's loads of other things you could be doing. So I think that kind of secretly pleased the gardener as well. Imagine that though. Imagine having a gardener that doesn't cut your grass for you, like it doesn't do your lawn. Dear, I don't know. Welcome to the funny farm right enough. So because of my neck and shoulder, not so much this last few days right enough, but I've been pretty immobile. So I've been spending a lot of time sat in my chair and trying to find things that I can do sitting in the chair that aren't detrimental to the healing process. And even sitting reading a book, and I love to read, I read a lot, I couldn't sit and hold a book up, and I just couldn't find a comfortable position to like lay it down anywhere. So I was getting a little bit frustrated. So I managed to find a way to prop my phone up. I've got one of these little gooseneck holders, and it's got a clip in the top. So I managed to put my phone at an angle so at least I could read through things on my phone. It was just the lifting my arm up to scroll wasn't the best, but I wangled my way into position. So I was reading National Geographic magazine on, through a subscription on my phone, and I was reading this article about one of these wildlife documentary filmmaker type people, producers. I don't know what he is, I can't remember now. I was taking quite a lot of painkillers as well. But he's done quite a few programmes for the BBC, and he's worked with like David Attenborough and the likes. And what he does is he hides cameras inside objects that would be in the environment of the animal that he wants to study. So, like inside rocks, or sometimes they use like robotic animals, like snails or whatever. So his latest one, he was wanting to observe some dolphins, and he put cameras inside things like pretend sea turtles and anemones and that kind of thing, so that he can observe them in their natural environment. And what he found out, I was absolutely flabbergasted by this, but I think it's amazing. He was following a group of young dolphins. So in terms of sort of human equivalent, they would have been like late teenage, early 20s kind of age, at that stage in their development. And he was watching this group of dolphins, and he's realised that they have figured out a way to extract toxin from a pufferfish. Now, enough toxin from a pufferfish is enough to kill a dolphin. And what they have realised is, if they chew it in a certain way and very gently, there's enough toxin comes out basically to get them high. And then what they do is they pass it round. So there's like a group of 3 or 4 of them, and they have a little chew on it, and then they pass it to their pal next door, and they have a wee chew on it. And after they've done that, they like lie and stare at the reflection like up at the top of the water. And he says their behaviour is as if, like after they've done it, is as if they're high. So these dolphins are basically using recreational drugs. And they found the perfect way to do it. But I don't know how they figured that out without killing themselves, because obviously maybe somebody was the sacrifice for it. The first time they chewed one and found out that that's what it did to them. Maybe, they took too much and didn't make it. But I was just absolutely fascinated by that. And they do say, dolphins are very, very clever. And they're one of the only species of animal, apart from humans, that mate for recreational purposes rather than breeding purposes. So I find it quite interesting that they found a way to alter their state of mind, and they do it just for fun. And I think it's even funnier that it's the young dolphins that were doing it and it wasn't any of the older ones. So absolutely fascinating, and I just love stuff like that. That's, you know, that's the reason I did a degree to do with animals. It's absolutely fascinating, and it makes me wonder if pigs would do the same thing, or, you know, something similar. So there you go, there's a bit of useless information for you for today. Right, if I take a wee zoom out now, you can see that half of the page. So there we go, we're starting to frame the image now, and that's just brought out a nice bit of colour there. And it ties in quite nicely with our water down the bottom. So I'm just going to continue on round and go up round the other side. And we can look at some finishing touches for the main part of the picture as well. Okay, so I've worked my way down from the bottom, and I'm just coming up to do this last sort of quarter now, rather than have you sit through the whole thing. So I'm still on Indian Throne Violet and Violet Blue. And I'm just jumping between these ones just now. So I'm just working my way around. I'm not doing anything exciting here, so I've nothing else to explain to you really. Just that I'm carrying on round. It is going a lot quicker than I thought it would, though. I did think that this was going to take absolutely ages. But no, we're doing okay. I was just looking out the window, and the sun is trying its very hardest to shine, which would be really good because it's been like very early, you know, like very early spring or very late winter here. The temperatures are so low for the time of year, to the point where there's been numerous days where I've actually had our heating on, you know, because the house has been cold. And that's not right in the middle of May. I don't care what anyone says, that's not right in the middle of May. Also getting washing dried as well as just not cool. So I'm not particularly happy with the weather just now. Want it to sort itself out and get a grip. Normally by this time of year we've had like a really hot weekend, and I've usually got a little bit of colour about me as well. Again, just being of Italian lineage, although I'm very pale because I'm Scottish, I do go brown really quickly. I just kind of have to like poke my head out for 5 minutes. And I usually, you know, have some sort of colour about me, and everyone asks me if I've been on holiday. I maintain that that's because I'm so pale to start with, though not because I take a really, really good tan. Okay, I'm going to switch out one of my pencils now. So I'm going to skip out the Indian Throne, and I'm going to have the Parma Violet join in here. We were talking about holidays. The pandemic situation here in Scotland is, I would say, we're cautiously optimistic now. Some people have taken liberties because things are starting to ease up. But I hopefully should be due my first vaccination in the next 3 or 4 weeks, which would be nice. And I think I would feel much better about things and just generally going out, because I have tried to avoid it up until now, just to keep, not just to keep myself safe, but to keep other people safe too, other than the absolute essentials. So yeah, it would be nice to be vaccinated. But we were talking about the number of people that have booked foreign holidays, and I just think it's really risky. Like, I wouldn't do it. And they're saying that, you know, there's some countries that people from the UK will be able to visit because it's on like a traffic light system, and I just wouldn't take the risk. I really wouldn't. But apparently people have been very keen to go abroad, and I just think it's a bit, I don't know, a bit risky. So we were talking about the next time we may get a holiday or we may not get a holiday, and I think we're just going to wait a little while. Be fine. We've managed up till now. I'm sure we'll manage another little while. But it would be nice to go away. Really nice to go away. I'm desperate to go back to Mauritius. Like, I really want to go back to Mauritius, but we were talking about maybe doing that for our 5th wedding anniversary. So this year is 3 years, and it'll probably take us that long to save up to go back anyway, because it's not cheap. But we did, I've said this every time that Mr. Jem and I have talked about it, I've said to him, the flight for us is two legs, so it's 2 separate flights there and back. And I'd said that if we went again, we flew economy the first time. And I said that if we could afford to do it, you know, if we had enough money put by, I would like to fly business class for one of the legs each direction. So on the way there, I would fly, normally Glasgow or Edinburgh we fly from. So I would fly Glasgow to Dubai economy, and then I would fly Dubai to Mauritius business class. because the second leg you are tired. It's basically 2 8-hour flights, and there's usually about 3 hours in the middle at Dubai airport. So, the second leg is when you're starting to flag a little bit. So I would really like to fly business class, and then on the way home, when you come back to Scotland, you want to be business class because you're tired, just tired. So that's what I would like to do, and it's Emirates that usually do the flights, and Emirates business class is amazing. It's more like first class than business class. So that's something that I'd really like to do. But again, the price in the flights jumps quite considerably if you go business class. So that's something that we're kind of looking at as well. But that, I think we'll probably will wait to our 5th wedding anniversary. But I absolutely love it there. I absolutely love it. I never knew I liked rum until I went to Mauritius. Yo-ho-ho with a bottle of rum right enough. That was literally me on my honeymoon. I have strong antihistamines to take, and I have to start taking them about 2 weeks before I go away. And they really help with my allergies as well. So again, if I eat something with nuts in, or like something that's of a nutty nature and I don't realise and I don't have time to spit it out, it really helps with the reaction with that. But they are super, super strong and they make me really dozy. So when we were on our honeymoon, I was basically just like wandering about in a trance for the full 2 weeks we were away. I was just in my own little world. I was quite happy, right enough, but between that and being soaked in rum, it was an interesting holiday, but it was such a good time. So worth it. But Mr. Jem had said if we went back again, he'd quite like to hire a car. And I said to him, well, if that's the case, you'll have to drive because I will not be fit to drive. I can't really drive when I take those antihistamines. So that's that. The nice thing about Mauritius is they do drive on the same side of the road as us Brits, which is not a common occurrence. Oz, I'm looking at you. It's kind of us. So that's quite nice. But the standard of driving is, shall we say, adventurous. The driving is adventurous. And the other thing about Mauritius as well that I found strange, only because it's completely different to us, but they look after their cats and dogs like the opposite way round to the way we do here in the UK. So in the mornings, they basically open their doors and let their dogs out. And their dogs roam about all day. And they come back at night. And they keep their cats shut in. They don't, they would look after their cats the way we look after our dogs. In that they would try and keep them confined on their property. Which I just think is so strange. But a Mauritian did explain it to me. And basically they said that dogs are much more street smart than cats. The dogs know how to cross the roads and things. Now, in my experience, the dogs just walk down the middle of the road and everybody blasts their horn at them till they get out of the way. And they, sometimes they don't even slow down. And that's why when we went out, we used to walk along the beach in front of where we were staying because we were on the non-touristy part of the island. We don't like touristy stuff that much. Right, I'm switching out to my last 3 pencils now, so that's me finally introduced to the lightest colour, which is lavender now. And we like to walk along the beach, and one day this dog just joined us and it had no collar or anything on, and it just sauntered along, and anybody looking at us, it would have looked like it was our dog. And I think it just, because they're out all day, it finds people that are walking and thinks, oh well, I'll go for a walk with you. And he was lovely, he was really friendly, he was a lovely wee dog. And then when we headed back up towards where we were staying, he just turned around and sat down and chilled out for half an hour and then sauntered away. I was like, it's amazing, absolutely amazing. It's all these little differences and things like that. I love finding out about stuff like that when I'm in new places. And the food, oh my god, the food. More fresh fish than you could shake a stick at, and just absolutely amazing. And a really nice melting pot of cultures as well, in terms of culture itself, but also in terms of food. It's a very very diverse culture in Mauritius, and I absolutely loved it. I just loved it. I would go back tomorrow. I'd go back today. I'd go back right now. But yeah, it's a place I really, really enjoyed. And the fruit bats, oh my good grief. Now in the UK, we have bats, but they're like this big. They're weeny. And the first time I saw one of these fruit bats crawling about above us at night, I just about bloody leapt out my seat because they're absolutely massive. But obviously very, very docile and, not bothered by people or anything. And I spent quite a significant time in my slightly hazy state, just sort of staring up at the dark, looking at these bats wandering about. And they're really nice as well, but they were having a little conflab, and you could see there was a few domestics and things going on. It was quite funny. And I'd said to Mr. Jem at one point, I said, I wonder where they go to sleep during the day, because obviously they're nocturnal. And on one of said walks with said dog along the shore, we'd walked quite far along actually, and Mr. Jem said to me, he says, we're going to have to find a bathroom, he says, because I need to pee. All right, okay, so there was public toilets, and this gentleman had pointed us in the direction of these public toilets. So it was up off the beach, and it was onto like a kind of like grassy area that was full of these really tall trees. And I'd said to Mr. Jem, I'll just sit on this bench here under these trees in the shade, and you can come and get me when you're done. So I'm sitting on the bench minding my own business. I thought I'd take some photographs. So I looked up at the sky and between the trees, and all of a sudden all I could see was hundreds of these bats, absolutely fast asleep, upside down, all tucked in. And I was like, so this is where you go to sleep. So they weren't actually that far away from where we were staying. So they didn't have a long jaunt to come and get something to eat at night and, to be out and about. But that was really, really funny, because it was literally like the day before I said, I wonder where they go during the day. And well, I found out myself, didn't I? So very, very cool. Very cool. Can you tell I really like Mauritius? It's actually one of my favourite places that I've ever visited. I was looking at this Parma Violet pencil, and I'm trying to figure out how it got so short, because it's not really a colour, it's not like a go-to pencil in this set for me, and I can't remember having used it recently for anything. The last time I would have used these purples in any sort of vast quantity would have been when I coloured it was a double page spread in one of Kirby Rosanna's books, and we did it was fish, and I made them purple. But that was ages ago. That was like nearly 2 years ago, I think. I wouldn't know without looking. I'm sure one of you guys will tell me in the comments. But I'm like, when did this pencil get so short? I don't know. Now that's a really big bubble. So I'll get the highlight in situ. There we go, so about there maybe. Mr. Jem and I watched a film together last night. It's something we don't really have a lot of time for these days, so it's quite nice when we do it. And a film, weirdly, I've never seen. I tend to see a lot of stuff because Mr. Jem loves to watch films. And I usually see snippets of things, just in passing, and see what he's watching. I always ask him what it is he's watching. So anyway, last night we were struggling to find something, and it was one of those ones where we must have sat and scrolled through Netflix and Amazon Video, for about an hour, and just couldn't find anything that was tickling us. And then Mr. Jem came across a film called The Prestige, and it's Christine Bale that's in it, amongst others. And it's about two magicians, this film, and if you haven't seen it, it's one of those films, I don't think it would be everyone's cup of tea, but even if it's not the story, if you're not into magicians and that, that kind of thing, and it's late 1800s, even if that's not your thing, it's well worth it for the story. It is really, really good. And I was quite surprised. Normally, if I'm not into a film, I get bored quite quickly, and then my attention span wanders, and I tend to want to start doing other things. And I sat through that entire film right to the end, and I looked at my watch, and it was really, really late, and I was like, I wasn't tired or anything. I was like, wow, look at the time. That was a really good film. So if you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend it. And obviously it's got magic tricks in it as well, so that makes everything better. That's a really good film. And I think it's quite an old film now. When I say an old film, I mean it's not been released in the last 3 or 4 years. But I really enjoyed it. And I didn't think it would be the kind of thing that Mr. Jem would watch, to be honest. Him and I do have quite similar taste in films overall. We do tend to plump for the same things. But it just struck me as something that he wouldn't have picked. But he does this all the time. Mr. Jem throws me curveballs all the time. I think he just tries to keep me on my toes, to be honest. But that's one of the things I like about him. He's a bit of a dark horse. That makes it fun. Especially when you've been together as long as we have. That's 9 years this year we've been together. So it's nice that he can still surprise me sometimes. He surprised me even more this morning, because Mr. Jem, he's not really one for helping round the house on account of the number of hours that he does at work. And I'd explained to him this morning, the things that I had to do today and blah, blah, blah. And one of the things I wanted to do was strip the bed so that I could change the bed and we could have fresh bedclothes tonight. So I went about my business and doing all the other things that I had to do, and I went upstairs and here he is taking all the bedclothes off. Mr. Jem hasn't stripped. The last time Mr. Jem stripped the bed was when I had my surgery and I physically couldn't do it, and that was 2015. That's the last time he stripped a bed. So I was really, really surprised. I understand why he's done it though, and it's, again, as I said, the reason for moving this video, but I will explain myself. Not that I feel I have to justify myself to you guys, but I will talk about it once I've dealt with the things that I have to deal with. So all shall be revealed. I don't like talking in riddles, but there's just a few things that I need to do, and all will become clear afterwards. I keep jumping about a bit too much here. I'm a bit sporadic here. Let's try and be a bit more consistent. Come on, Jem. I would really like to go out and sit in the sunshine today, though. I'm kind of sick of being in the house. See, because the weather's been so wet. I mean, it's been raining like every single day, and it's not been warm rain. So this little twinkle of sunshine that I can see out the window, I'm kind of desperate to go outside and maybe do something in the garden, or even just go and sit for a little while. I can actually hold a book up now, so it might be nice to go and sit and read for a wee while in the sunshine, get some vitamin D in me. So I'll need to see what Mr. Jem's doing. Again, he's kind of slammed the anchors on this last week or two. He is really tired, and he's not, he doesn't seem to be recharging his batteries at night. He just seems to be tired every morning, so he decided to take a little bit of time off. But when I say Mr. Jem's taking time off, it's not like normal people take time off. He still has to be doing things, but just not farm related things. So this morning, as I say earlier on, he was out with the strimmer earlier on. That's his idea of a day off. His strimmer cutting his grass, and he's away out just now with the dogs. It's very quiet in here. I actually find it kind of weird because it's just automatic. I look round every now and then and do like a subconscious head count, and if I'm missing somebody, I go and find them, kind of thing, just to make sure I know where they are. Especially with Woo, because she can't hear you if you shout her. You have to go and look for her. And I'm still doing that, even though I know the dogs aren't in the house. I still do it. And it's just force of habit because I'm with them all the time. So it's a bit odd right now, but it's kind of nice. And it also means as well, I can walk through the house and I can walk into various rooms in the house, and I don't have somebody trailing at my heels, which is also nice. Right, there we go. We're all finished. I'll take a wee zoom out now. Oh yeah, I'm really pleased with that. I'm really glad I did that. It doesn't bring a huge amount to the picture, but I think it just finishes it off quite nicely. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to take... I'll speak of the devil. Mr. Jem's just wandered past the cave window with all 3 dogs in tow. Right, I'm going to take this 70% cool grey, and just having walked away from the picture and come back to it, it's like that thing I talk about, like fresh pair of eyes, and I just feel that the way the light source is and what's happening with the back end of the boat's just not dramatic enough. So I really just want to darken down some of these areas and just make them a little bit more kind of muted and grubby, for want of a better phrase. I don't think the 70 is going to cut it. I think it's going to have to be 90. Right, let's see how that goes. So try in here first. Yeah, that's better. So I'm just going to run it over the whole section, but I'm doing it like a sort of hatching method. I'm just doing it that way. I'm not actually colouring, because I don't want to take away too much from the colour that's there. Yeah, that's much better. That's much better. I'll do the same in here as well. Again, I always do this quite gradually because same old thing. I think I've said this in the last video as well. It's much easier to add than to take away. Maybe even this section here though. So the last finishing touch here is it's actually one of the first things I thought about when I saw this image. And for this, I have got a cheap paintbrush. Now this was a paintbrush that actually has a split in the fibres. It was never a good paintbrush to start with. You actually want a cheap paintbrush like this. You don't want one with a lovely point on it. And I have got a tube of white gouache here. I always use the Winsor & Newton Designer's gouache. I like it very much. And what we want to do is just have a slightly damp brush. We don't want to really mix in water because we want to keep the opacity of the gouache. So I usually just kind of like on a bit of paper on my hand, doesn't really matter. And I just dip the paintbrush straight in the tube. And then I take a sheet of paper. Now in this case, because it's white paint we're using, I like to use coloured paper, and I've got this little post-it notepad, and I'm actually going to take off quite a lot of the excess on the pad. And then after that I am going to start putting some of this in here, and we is going to have ourselves some sea foam. Because this is, I would imagine that this is going to be quite rough and quite traumatic and dramatic. Work our way around. And I think probably that this will come up most of the way up the front of the boat. Maybe out like this. I don't want to obscure too much of our tentacles though. So I'm just going to follow this round here. And again, exactly the same story as the pencil. You can add more if you feel the way of it, but it's very difficult to take it away, so we go gently. Yeah, this is exactly what I was looking for. I've been looking forward to this moment since I started colouring this. So the drier your brush is, the better here. Obviously it still has to have some paint on it. That kind of helps, but it's you'll get more of a texture and an effect if your brush is dry, you know, it's not absolutely loaded with paint. And you know, I go back and forth between picking up what I've dabbed off and going in the tube just based on how much I think I need on the brush. But see, the cheaper and more knackered the paintbrush you've got for this, the better it is actually going to turn out. It's quite easy to get a bit dab happy here, but you're not going to do any great damage really. There we go. How does that look? Does that not just help it make it look a little bit more angry? I might even just dab a wee bit, not as dramatic as, or not as much as we've had up here. I really hope you can't hear Pip panting outside the door. She likes to lie in the hallway outside of the cave because it's a hard floor, but also it's cool in there because of like the way the sun just comes through the door. So she really likes it in there when she's too hot, and she is super, super hot. She's panting hard. Again, the phrase we would use in Scotland, pardon my potty mouth, but it's she's blown out her arse. That refers to someone who's very tired and they're puffing and panting. Right, there we go. I think I'm going to call this done, guys. I have really, this was a surprise to me, this page. I didn't think I was going to enjoy it all that much. And I have had an absolute ball. And as I said in the last video, this is growing on me like more and more as it's gone along. And see the gouache at the end, that's just made me happy. It's done it for me. So yeah, I'm really pleased with this. I hope you've enjoyed following along, and thanks for sticking with me till the end with this one. I've got kind of like a mini project that's sort of colouring but sort of not. I don't want to give any more than that away. I'm going to slot that in before we start our next colouring chat series. The other thing that I've been doing as well is I've done a bit of housekeeping with the chatty colouring videos. There's a lot to get through, but I've gone back through some of the older series, and when you get to the end of the video, the link to the next video is in the end card so that you can keep watching them all the way through. So for our newer subscribers that maybe haven't seen some of the older colouring chat pages, that's going to make it a bit better for you, especially if you want to follow along. So feel free to go out. There is a playlist which has got all the colouring chat videos on if you want to check it out. Okay guys, thank you very much once again for watching, really appreciate it. I'm going to go and see if I can grab some sunshine, so please look after each other and stay safe, and I'll see you back in the cave, wait a minute, this is for Thursday. I'll see you back in the cave on Sunday for another video. So have a good day everyone, and bye for now.